What happens when America's most beloved actress, the woman whose smile could melt a nation, walks onto a cheerful morning show set, only to discover she's the target of a calculated public ambush? Julia Roberts, Hollywood royalty, the golden girl of cinema for over 3 decades. Her name alone brings to mind warmth, grace, and charm. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really caused Julia Roberts to completely lose it on live television. But that October morning, when she stepped onto the set of The View, she was about to face something darker, a trap hidden behind polite smiles and studio lights. This wasn't going to be a clumsy interview gone awkward. It was going to be a televised confrontation, one that would test her composure, her strength, and her dignity. The cameras weren't rolling yet, but the stage was already set for disaster. The morning air at the Paramount Studios lot was crisp, that kind of electric autumn chill that makes everything feel alive. Trucks hummed, cables coiled across the pavement, crew members hurried with headsets and coffee cups. Inside Studio 7, The View's set gleamed under the blinding brightness of television lights. The polished desk shone like glass. Julia arrived early, 7:15 a.m., a full hour and 45 minutes before showtime. She had built her career on discipline and respect for the craft. Success had never made her careless. She stepped out of her car wearing an emerald green silk dress that shimmered under the lights, the color setting off her famous auburn hair perfectly. At 55, she was radiant, not the surgically altered kind of beauty that Hollywood so often celebrates, but something deeper. Her face carried stories. Her laugh line spoke of real joy. Her eyes glowed with quiet confidence. Inside the green room, makeup artists fluttered around her, though there wasn't much to fix. Her skin was luminous, her smile effortless. She made small talk with the crew, as she always did. "How's your daughter doing?" she asked one of the makeup artists, remembering a conversation from 6 months earlier. She was starting college, right? The woman's eyes widened in surprise. "You remembered. She's loving it, studying sociology." "That's wonderful," Julia replied with genuine warmth. She wasn't performing, she simply cared. Nearby, a young production assistant shifted nervously, clutching a clipboard. "Miss Roberts, we're so thrilled to have you here. Pretty Woman is my comfort movie. I've watched it 100 times. Julia smiled, that famous heart-stopping smile. "That means the world to me. That movie changed my life too." The assistant hesitated for a moment. "Joy's really, excited for this interview," she said, her voice faltering slightly. Something about the tone made Julia glance up. There was a flicker of unease. But before she could ask anything, the assistant had already hurried off down the hallway. Outside, near the coffee station, that same assistant whispered to a colleague, "Did you warn her?" "How could I?" the colleague whispered back, glancing around nervously. "What was I supposed to say?" "Hey, Miss Roberts, Joy's planning to ambush you on live TV. I'd lose my job before lunch." "This feels wrong," the first one said quietly. "It is wrong," came the reply. "But what can we do?" Their helpless silence said it all. Meanwhile, on set, Joy Behar sat in her chair, unnervingly still. Her smile was thin, her posture rigid. That quiet, coiled energy, those who worked with her knew it well. It meant she was preparing to strike. Whoopi Goldberg, the show's calm voice and moral anchor, noticed immediately. "What are you planning?" she asked, her tone both tired and cautious. Joy smiled without warmth. "Just an honest conversation," she replied, her voice silky but sharp. "That's what we do here, isn't it?" "There's a difference between honesty and ambush," Whoopi warned. Joy's eyes glinted. "Maybe some people need to be challenged. Maybe America's sweetheart isn't as sweet as everyone thinks." Whoopi sighed. She'd seen this pattern before, Joy's habit of targeting people who were too adored, too untouchable. She seemed almost offended by anyone who carried grace with ease. "Just remember," Whoopi said softly, "she's our guest." Joy's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Guests can handle tough questions. The warning hung in the air like smoke. Minutes later, the countdown began. 5 minutes to air, the stage manager shouted. The hum of production intensified. Cameras adjusted, microphones checked. The live audience filled the seats, buzzing with anticipation. Some clutched Pretty Woman DVDs or Erin Brockovich posters, hoping to catch her attention. 2 minutes, came the call. Backstage, Julia took a slow breath. She'd done this hundreds of times. The routine was familiar, the entrance, the wave, the charm, but something about the air today felt heavier. 30 seconds! The theme music swelled. The studio lights blazed to life. The cameras blinked red. Whoopi's voice carried across the room. "Good morning, everyone, and welcome to The View. We have a truly special guest today. 3-time Academy Award winner, Hollywood icon, and the woman we all adore, Julia Roberts." The crowd erupted in applause, the kind that shakes the room. Julia stepped out, glowing under the lights, waving to the audience with genuine gratitude. She placed her hand over her heart, humbled, smiling like she meant it, because she did. Whoopi stood to greet her warmly. They hugged like old friends. The chemistry was real. Julia moved down the panel, greeting each host, bright, gracious, calm. But when she reached Joy Behar, the temperature shifted. Joy didn't stand. She extended her hand lazily, her smile practiced but cold. "Thanks for coming, Julia." Julia matched it with grace. "Thank you for having me, Joy." Then she sat, perfectly poised. She had no idea what was coming next. The show began like any other. For the first 10 minutes, everything felt normal, warm, polished, safe. Whoopi led with kindness, asking about Julia's new film, a touching drama about forgiveness and second chances. The conversation flowed easily, the way it always did when two professionals respected each other. "The emotion you bring to this character is unbelievable," Whoopi said. "I watched it twice, and it destroyed me both times." Julia's eyes lit up. "That means so much coming from you," she replied. "This story is about redemption, about finding peace after pain. I think we can all relate to that." Sunny Hostin leaned forward, clearly moved. "The scene where you confront your daughter, it was powerful. How did you prepare for something that raw?" Julia smiled softly. "I talked to real women who've lived through those experiences, women who had to forgive themselves, who had to rebuild. Their stories shaped everything." Sarah Haynes jumped in enthusiastically. "And Marcus Chen directed it. What was that like?" Julia nodded. "He's amazing. He creates such a safe space on set. You can take risks, be vulnerable. That kind of trust changes everything." The audience was captivated. It was the kind of heartfelt conversation people tuned in for, genuine, inspiring, full of admiration. But then, the atmosphere shifted. Joy Behar, who had been unusually silent, uncrossed her arms and leaned forward. The smile she gave was tight, the kind of smile that hides a knife behind it. "You know, Julia," she said suddenly, her tone slicing through the calm like a blade, "I've been sitting here listening to all these beautiful stories about your career and your compassion, and I have to ask..." She paused dramatically, eyes narrowing. "Don't you ever get tired of pretending?" The words hit the air like a slap. The audience went still. Julia blinked, caught off guard. "I'm sorry," she said carefully. "Pretending?" Joy tilted her head, voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Oh, come on, the whole America's Sweetheart act, the smiles, the kindness, remembering everyone's name, it's all very curated, isn't it?" Whoopi frowned immediately. "Joy, I don't think..." Joy cut her off. No, let's be real for once. People are always talking about authenticity in Hollywood. Julia Roberts has built an entire empire on being nice, but is that real? Or is it just good branding?" You could feel the audience's discomfort spreading like a chill. Camera operators glanced nervously at each other. Julia's smile didn't vanish, but it stiffened slightly. "Are you suggesting that kindness is a performance?" she asked quietly. "I'm suggesting," Joy continued, clearly enjoying herself now, "that it's easy to play the humble, down-to-earth movie star when you're worth hundreds of millions. Maybe that sweet act is just the best role you've ever played." Sunny tried to intervene. "Joy, that's unfair." But Joy kept going, her voice rising, gaining confidence from her own cruelty. "Let's talk numbers. You love charity work, right? How much of your fortune have you actually donated? Be honest, percentage-wise." The air turned heavy. Julia exhaled slowly, her poise unbroken. "I don't usually discuss my donations publicly," she said. Because I believe charity should come from sincerity, not publicity. But since you're asking, yes, I've given tens of millions to causes I believe in. Tens of millions, Joy repeated mockingly. Out of what, 200, 250 million? That's barely 10%. The average American gives away 3%, and they can barely pay their rent. You could give away 90% and still live like royalty, but you don't, do you? The silence was deafening. Even the studio lights seemed to dim under the weight of her words. Julia's jaw tightened just slightly, a tiny crack in her calm exterior. Joy, she said evenly, I came here to talk about my work, not to justify my existence. Joy leaned back, smirking. Ah, there it is, the defensiveness. The moment anyone asks you a hard question, you crumble. That tells me everything. Julia's expression sharpened. There's a difference between asking hard questions and launching personal attacks. Joy laughed, the sound hollow and cutting. Personal attacks? Please, this is journalism. Maybe you're just not used to someone challenging you instead of worshiping you. Whoopi tried again to step in. Let's get back to the film, please. No, Joy interrupted, waving her off. I want to hear this. Julia plays all these righteous, brave women on screen. Erin Brockovich, the hero who fights corruption. But in real life, she's hoarding wealth while preaching kindness. The audience gasped quietly. You talk about strength, Joy continued relentlessly. But aren't you just playing another role? America's sweetheart? Humble, gracious, untouchable? It's a fantasy, isn't it? That was it. The last straw. Julia sat still for a moment. Her expression was unreadable. Then, slowly, she uncrossed her legs and leaned forward. Her voice, when it came, was low, calm, but edged with steel. Joy, she said, can I ask you something? Joy smiled, thinking she'd won. Of course. Julia looked her straight in the eye. What did I ever do to you? Joy froze. Excuse me? What did I do, Julia repeated, that made you so angry with me? Because this isn't about charity or fame, it's personal. Joy opened her mouth, but no words came out. This interview wasn't about honesty, Julia continued, her voice steady. You invited me here under false pretenses, not to talk about my work, but to humiliate me. Why? I'm holding you accountable, Joy snapped, clinging to her defense. For what? Julia shot back, her tone rising just slightly. For being successful? For smiling? For treating people kindly? The studio fell into a stunned silence. Joy's mask began to crack. The tension in the studio was unbearable. You could almost hear the heartbeat of every person in the room pounding against the silence. The cameras kept rolling, the audience frozen between awe and disbelief, unsure whether they were watching a talk show or witnessing the emotional equivalent of a live execution. Julia Roberts, the woman known for her grace and composure, sat completely still, her face calm, but her eyes glowing with something raw, something powerful. Then, with the precision of someone who has spent a lifetime mastering restraint, she finally spoke, and the entire tone of the morning shifted in an instant. Joy, she said softly, her voice smooth but carrying a quiet thunder beneath it. You're confusing kindness with performance. Her words landed with surgical precision. If someone remembers your name or asks about your day, maybe it's not strategy. Maybe it's just basic human decency. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Julia didn't give her the chance. She straightened slightly, that famous poise radiating through the tension like sunlight breaking through clouds. I've spent over 30 years in this business, she continued. I've dealt with gossip, lies, assumptions, and all the judgment in the world. But I've never been spoken to like this. Not once, not anywhere, and certainly not under the pretense of a friendly conversation. Joy leaned forward, forcing a smirk. You call this judgment? I call it accountability. You live a life of luxury, Julia. Isn't it fair to ask if you're out of touch with the people who made you famous? Her voice grew sharper, like she was daring Julia to lose control. Or do you just prefer people who tell you how perfect you are? That's when something inside Julia changed. Her posture shifted. She wasn't defensive anymore. She was composed, commanding, and terrifyingly clear. The transformation was mesmerizing. Joy, she said, her tone cutting through the air. You invited me here under false pretenses. You made me think this was going to be a conversation about art. not an interrogation about my character." Joy scoffed. "Oh, come on. If you can't handle tough questions?" Julia's hand came up, palm open, silencing her without a word. "Tough questions," she said slowly, "are about truth. What you're doing is cruelty disguised as courage." The words were quiet, but they hit like a sledgehammer. The audience gasped audibly. The studio was dead silent, and even Whoopi's eyes widened with shock. Julia stood, her movement smooth and deliberate, like an actress walking into the final act of a play. Except this wasn't a performance. "Do you know what I've learned after 30 years of working in Hollywood?" she said, her voice steady but now charged with emotion. "That real strength doesn't come from tearing people down. It comes from staying kind when the world gives you every reason not to be." Joy tried to interrupt again, her tone wobbling between anger and desperation. "You can't just walk away when someone challenges you, Julia." "I'm not walking away," Julia replied, her gaze locking on Joy with fierce clarity. "I'm standing up. There's a difference." The way she said it, calm, unwavering, almost regal, sent a visible shiver through the crowd. Then, as if the floodgates had opened, Julia's restraint gave way to righteous fire. Her voice grew stronger, filled with conviction, no longer measured but alive with truth. "You accuse me of being fake because I choose to be kind? Because I treat people with respect? Because I don't use my platform to perform goodness for applause?" Let me tell you something, Joy. I don't have to perform kindness. I live it. I don't have to prove my generosity to anyone. The people who've been helped by it already know. Her words were like arrows, each one sharp and deliberate. "I've helped rebuild schools in Mississippi and Louisiana after hurricanes," she said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "I've funded libraries and scholarships for students who had nothing. I've supported cancer research, environmental causes, shelters for victims of abuse, quietly, without a single press release, because that's what real giving looks like. It's not for show. It's not for headlines. It's just right." She paused, breathing in deeply, regaining her composure. "And yet here I am, being told that because I don't make a spectacle of it, I'm somehow a fraud. Do you understand how twisted that sounds?" Joy's face turned pale. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Julia didn't wait for her. "You want to talk about my wealth?" she continued, voice strong now, almost shaking the air. "Fine. I earned every dollar I've ever made. I wasn't born into money. I didn't marry into it. I built a career through talent, discipline, and respect for the work. And you know what? I'm proud of that. But since when did success become a crime? Since when did happiness become suspicious?" The audience applauded softly, hesitant at first, as if unsure whether clapping was allowed, but the sound began to grow. Whoopi looked at Julia with awe. Sarah and Sunny were visibly emotional. Joy sat frozen in her seat, clutching her cue cards like they might save her from drowning. Julia turned her gaze directly to Joy, the calm returning to her eyes. "You say you're holding me accountable. Accountable for what? For not crumbling under your hostility? For having boundaries? For knowing my worth?" She tilted her head slightly, her expression firm but sad. "You talk about power like it's something to be ashamed of. But the truth is, Joy, you use yours to tear people apart, and you've mistaken cruelty for honesty for so long that you can't tell the difference anymore." Joy's lip trembled slightly, her face flushed red. "How dare you?" she hissed. "How dare I?" Julia's voice rose for the first time, and the force of it filled the studio. "No, Joy, how dare you? You think because you sit behind a desk with cameras pointed at you, you get to decide who's real and who isn't. But let me tell you something. Real people don't need to humiliate others to feel important." The room erupted in a wave of applause that Joy couldn't stop. Julia stood there, illuminated under the hot stage lights, no longer just a guest, but a woman reclaiming her dignity in front of millions. "I've dealt with bullies before," Julia continued, her tone softening again, her control returning. "People who project their bitterness onto others. And do you know what I've learned? People attack what they envy. They try to destroy what reminds them of what they've lost. Maybe what you see in me, Joy, isn't a performance. Maybe it's a reflection. And maybe that's what scares you." Joy looked away, her voice small now. "That's completely unfair." Julia shook her head. "No. What's unfair is inviting someone into your space and ambushing them just to make yourself feel superior. What's unfair is dressing cruelty up as truth. She took a step forward, and her words became almost gentle, though they carried devastating weight. I actually used to admire you, Joy. I thought you were brave. I thought you asked hard questions because you wanted to understand people. But this, she gestured toward the set, the cameras, the stunned audience. This isn't courage. It's cruelty. It's bitterness pretending to be bravery. The audience was silent again. Julia unclipped her microphone, the soft click echoing in the stillness. I came here to talk about storytelling, she said quietly. About something I care deeply about. But what I got instead was a reminder that no matter how long you've been kind, there will always be people who mistake kindness for weakness. And that's fine, because I know who I am, and I don't need your approval to prove it. She placed the microphone neatly on the desk, straightened her dress, and turned to leave. As she walked toward the exit, Joy, desperate for the last word, called out, "Running away. How brave of you." Julia stopped. Slowly, she turned back, her eyes calm, her expression serene. "Running away?" she repeated softly. Then, after a beat, she smiled. Not the dazzling Hollywood smile everyone knew, but something smaller, sharper, infinitely more real. "No, Joy. I'm not running. I'm refusing to participate in my own humiliation. That's not cowardice. That's self-respect." The entire studio erupted in applause, loud, uncontrollable, emotional. Julia turned once more, her posture proud, her chin high, and walked off the set with the quiet confidence of someone who had just redefined what strength truly looked like. The moment Julia Roberts disappeared behind that stage door, chaos erupted. Producers rushed to cut to commercial, the crew scrambled, and Whoopi sat in stunned silence, staring at Joy Behar with an expression that could only be described as disbelief. The air still crackled with the electricity of what had just happened, a live, unfiltered act of defiance that no one had seen coming. Audience members were still frozen in their seats, mouths slightly open, unsure if they'd just witnessed the end of an interview or the beginning of a reckoning. Then, as if on cue, a low murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone began to clap, slow at first, hesitant, then another joined in, and another. Within seconds, the studio was filled with the sound of thunderous applause echoing through the rafters. It wasn't the sound of entertainment, it was the sound of respect. Joy sat motionless, her face pale, her cue cards trembling in her hand. For the first time in years, she looked unsure. Whoopi finally turned toward her, eyes narrowing slightly. "You went too far," she said quietly, her voice calm but edged with disappointment. Joy didn't reply. She didn't have to. The silence said everything. Behind the scenes, Julia's team moved swiftly, but not in panic. Her publicist didn't call damage control. There was no frantic spin strategy. Julia didn't need one. She had handled herself with poise, precision, and grace that no statement could possibly improve upon. As she stepped into her car outside the studio, she wasn't angry, just calm, reflective, and oddly free. For years, she'd smiled through cruelty, endured invasive questions, tolerated arrogance disguised as wit. But today was different. Today, she'd decided that grace didn't mean silence. Within 20 minutes, the world had seen it. Clips from The View spread across social media like wildfire. Millions of people watched, rewound, and watched again. The hashtags were instant and relentless. "Ooh, stand with Julia," "Respect Roberts," "Nina's view gone too far." Viewers weren't just talking, they were furious. One tweet read, "I just watched Joy Behar try to publicly humiliate Julia Roberts. It backfired spectacularly." Another said, "That wasn't journalism, that was cruelty. Julia handled it like a queen." Then came the tidal wave of support from Hollywood. Actors, directors, and crew members who had worked with Julia shared their own stories. Stories of quiet kindness, generosity, and grace behind the scenes. "Julia Roberts remembers everyone's name on set," one actor wrote, "even the interns. Especially the interns." Another tweeted, "What I just saw wasn't an interview. It was bullying, and Julia destroyed it with elegance." But what hit hardest were the voices of ordinary people. Teachers posted about her foundation funding their school programs. Students shared stories of scholarships bearing her name. Hospital workers revealed her anonymous donations that had saved lives without fanfare. One woman tweeted, "Julia Roberts funded my entire education. No cameras, no publicity, just kindness." And Joy Behar dared to call her fake? That post alone racked up millions of likes. Joy, meanwhile, faced a storm of backlash unlike anything she'd ever experienced. The network's social media accounts were flooded with angry comments. Advertisers called the producers, demanding explanations. News outlets ran the clip on repeat, analyzing every expression, every word, every second of the confrontation. Commentators called it the most uncomfortable television moment of the decade. 3 days later, Joy released a statement that felt more like a PR bandage than an apology. "I have enormous respect for Julia Roberts and her body of work," it read. "My goal was to have an honest conversation about fame and authenticity. I regret if my approach caused discomfort." The public saw right through it. Screenshots of the statement were shared with captions like, "Translation, I'm sorry you were offended. The internet wasn't buying it."